welcome to the channel. If you want to read this at your own leisure, it'll be down below in the description box, the link that is. So let's get into what's new. First of all, here's the size, roughly. Current gen of PS5, 2.4 gigs. The Series X and S is 6 gigs, Xbox One 5.7 gigs, PS4 2.4 gigs, and PC 5.6 gigs, roughly. Don't go, well, mine wasn't 5.6, it was 5.7329. Really, I could give a darn. So, content. Added in-game support for the Settlement expansion and Yule Festival. The Yule Festival is a time-limited event with several festivities to enjoy and rewards to obtain. To bring this and future festivals to life, you'll see the arrival of the revelers just east of the current settlement. We'll provide more details about the Settlement expansion and the Yule Festival in our upcoming Yule season preview article. I just woke up. Stay tuned. Miscellaneous legendary animal trophies will now correctly appear in the Longhouse. You mean after I've hunted them, like their spirit's going to come and get me? What's the story there? Balancing. Tweak the NPC power level behavior. NPC's power will now be at a maximum difference of 51 below the player. Yes. NPCs that are 51 power levels below the player will be highlighted in green. World bosses will match the player's power level when the power exceeds the world boss's base level. Also applies to alpha animals, zealots, zealots, whatever. This change applies to all difficulties. Added lootable chests to the Grand Majester's hideout. Note that this hideout is only available from a very specific moment in game. Spoilers. Addressed an issue where the crit spark rune would not work when slotted into bows. It just wasn't sparking. Addressed an issue where the wrong weapon stats were displayed for specific items. Royal Guard, Viper Bow, Death Speaker, the Mark of Saul, Doppelhander, Hund Toth. Game improvements, performance and stability. Improved the stability and performance. We've got PC. Addressed some freezes when performing specific actions for the first time. That was cringe. I know, that was kind of the whole point. PC addressed an issue that could cause freezes during splash screen. I'm not about to splash anything on the screen. Graphics, audio, and animation. Addressed various graphics issues, various character or NPC animation issues, various clipping issues. Addressed an issue where fish may lay on its side during the fishing animation, as opposed to doing what? Addressed an issue where some NPCs could cut the air instead of wheat. Practice doesn't always make perfect. Addressed an issue where NPCs that are being assassinated while being unconscious would sometimes get up during the animation. Hey, I want to be alive for this, or awake for this, rather. Whatever. Tattooed Mimir's head. Addressed an issue with jagged seafoam. Quests, world events, side activities. Addressed an issue in a sword shower in Anacastre where Elfgard didn't move to the assault location. Addressed an issue where players cannot complete Honor's Hubri. Note that this will spawn Legifvina. I almost said vagina. Again, reset her position and restart the quest. Well, it's a she, so there you go. It wasn't too far from the truth. Addressed an issue that caused Tarbin to follow Ivor everywhere when the baker's plaint wasn't completed. Your watch has ended, Tabern. Addressed an issue where fast travel wouldn't be available under certain conditions when returning to England after completing the Hordefylke arc. Addressed an issue where allies would not help Ivor opening doors at the Isle of Ailey Monastery. Teamwork makes the dream work. Addressed an issue with the settlement anomalies light beams that prevented players from clipping. My goodness, completing the anomaly. I need to go back to bed. Addressed an issue in Well-Traveled where the objective would not update under certain circumstances. Addressed an issue where Fenrir could get stuck underground, or an issue where Ivor would sometimes be levitating during assaults. Outros. No more Wingadarium Leviosa for this one. Addressed an issue in defensive measures where Jotuns would be able to pass through the shield after the bring the invaders into the shield objective was completed. You shall not pass. Addressed an issue in Brewing Rebellion where the cutscene wouldn't trigger when the door was opened by an NPC by accident. Oh, oops, sorry. Shh. Addressed an issue in the false Eldermancy that prevented players from completing it under certain conditions. This Hundwall ain't loyal. Addressed an issue in Kingdom's End where Guthrum doesn't leave the Hampton blockade area after releasing the prisoners, or could randomly become inactive. Addressed an issue in A Sword Shower in Anacastri that prevented players from completing the quest, or an issue in the Goddess of Birth that prevented players from completing the event, or an issue in Glory Regained where players could become stuck on a platform with the horn, as long as the horn wasn't stuck exactly. Addressed an issue in View Above All, where the quest objective would sometimes not update after closing the gates. Or an issue in the Rivalry for the Ages, where players couldn't complete the quest under certain circumstances. An issue in the Boar with the Golden Nose, where players couldn't complete a world event due to Lady Trotters not spawning. Addressed an issue in Defensive Measures, where players would die when returning to Asgard. Addressed an issue in Cruel Destiny that prevented players from proceeding to the second phase of the boss fight. Quest name checks out. Addressed an issue in Madness of the Stones that prevented players from proceeding with the quest. Addressed an issue in Bleeding the Leech that prevented players from completing the quest, or an issue where Petra would run into the opposite direction of the elk, or an issue where players could sometimes not get back into the room with the Norns. Yes, the phone was ringing, but 99% of the time it's people asking me if I need my grass cut, and it's the middle of winter with snow. So no, I don't need my grass cut. I can do that myself, you prick. Addressed an issue in Giants of Fimbulwinter where Eivor could get stuck inside the quest area, or an issue in Smashing the Compass that prevented players from completing the quest, or an issue in Warweary where players couldn't re-enter the church under certain circumstances, or an issue in War of the Collectors where the world events wouldn't be completed under certain circumstances, or an issue in the Big Finish where the quest objective wouldn't update any further. So I guess it wasn't such a big finish after all now, was it? Or an issue that prevented players from entering Skirmir's Mitten in the Lost Cauldron. Addressed an issue in Firing the Arrow where the quest objective would sometimes not update, or an issue where some players couldn't progress the game anymore upon reaching England after Title Update 1.04. Addressed an issue with the Steinbjorn encounter. In the world, we've got addressed various objects and texture placement issues, various instances where the player could become stuck on objects. You know, maybe like the ones where shit's floating in the air and you kind of like get stuck on there. Yeah, exactly. Gameplay, combat, and AI addressed various NPC behavior animation issues, or an issue that allowed players to shoot targets through walls without using piercing shot. I know nothing about that. Or an issue with spears not being effective to destroy windows, or an issue where the fishing hut kid was roaming Ravensthorpe instead of being in their house. You're officially grounded. Horses will now run away when being hurt with a torch. Before they just stood around, they enjoyed it. An issue where Jotuns could sometimes warp into walls when shape-shifting gigged, or an issue where monks would sometimes stand still, not perform their tasks. Addressed an issue where hitting a horse with a Saxon boat will cause it to disappear when mounting it. Sprint will now be interrupted by actions other than dodging. An issue where Eivor would become invisible to AI detection when fast traveling during a dice game. Interesting. Or an issue where NPCs may randomly start pirouetting on a Saxon boat. Hey, whatever floats your boat, I guess. Abilities, perks, and skills addressed an issue where players couldn't perform heavy attacks with Frost Ruin or Sinner Skull, or an issue where Frost Ruin's perk wouldn't activate even when conditions are met, or instances where players were able to open barred doors with the dive of the Valkyrie's ability, or an issue where the level 2 incendiary power trap couldn't be detonated a second time when the first trap was set off by an NPC, or an issue where man's best friend wouldn't deal any damage to zealots in some instances. That a good boy. Largely increased the mastery points cap. User Interface and Hud addressed various UI HUD issues and various localization issues. Items that are a part of a bundle in the Animus store will now show the corresponding items in the details page, or an issue where players could sometimes lose weapons when performing a dual weapon swap. Tweaked Rita's Informer icon to make it appear smaller. Changed adrenaline friend icon to make it more distinguishable from the adrenaline upgrade. Also, make sure if you give this video a thumb down, I'll make sure your icon appears smaller. Torches / oil jars can now be dropped, put on the ground with the Y or triangle button. Addressed an issue that allowed players to get the beggar reward several times. Well, they were begging. Kind of goes hand in hand there. Addressed an issue where stats wouldn't update after leaving offline mode, or an issue where players couldn't interact with Reddit anymore. Added off to QuickTime event input type in the menu. Turning this option off will allow the game to bypass mashing actions during some boss encounters, or an issue with alpha animals where players wouldn't be awarded the skill point when animals were not killed by the player. So what were they killed by instead? An issue where opals would not disappear from the map under certain conditions after collection, or an issue where experienced travelers would unlock locations for the wrong territory, or an issue where players wouldn't be able to create or load a manual save anymore, or an issue where Layla's laptop couldn't be navigated with focused navigation. Named cloud saves appropriately. Cloud saves will now be named autosave manual or episode save cloud. Addressed an issue where saves could be displayed as corrupt when saving when the internet connection is lost, or an issue on where the Pathfinder setting resets to custom after rebooting the game, or an issue where cloud saves could disappear under certain conditions. Well, it's not always cloudy out. There's clear skies, and I know this time of year, especially in Canada with winter, it's usually cloudy, but like today, there's not a cloud in the sky, and so your cloud could disappear as well. That was cringy, but you know what? We're just going to move on. Photo mode addressed the issue where filters reset to no filter when adjusting other values in photo mode. An issue where the photo mode camera would get stuck in the objects, or frames will now function properly. System PC addressed an issue with the benchmark tool that caused the tool not to collect data for a moment after unpausing the session. Addressed an issue where VRAM indicators did not correspond with actual VRAM consumption. Reduced intensity and duration of the parry rumble. Controllers go burr. And lastly, PS5 addressed an issue on PlayStation 5 where the season pass wouldn't be displayed as owned after purchase. That is because they knew your little bitch ass probably bought it from a scalper. I'm just kidding. Calm down. That's it for these patch notes. As always, if you liked the video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up. It actually greatly helps support the channel with the algorithm telling Google and YouTube, this guy seems alright, he's getting a lot of positive feedback. You know what? We're going to make him a little bit more relevant in the search results. If you want to ruin my life, go ahead and give it a thumbs down, and I'll just snap it off in your ass. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, naturally that would be well appreciated, but if not, thanks for stopping by anyways. Take care, boys and girls, or whatever it is you identify as, and maybe I'll see at least some of you in the next video. Bye now.